The age of Methuselah as it appears in the Bible has been the subject of controversy, factoids, and trivia. But have you ever questioned why he outlived everyone else? It has the capacity to drastically change our perspective, giving you the feeling and wondering if everything about life has changed. In a way, right before Noah carried on the disclosures of the holy men who came before him. God has already started something before even Noah was born. He arrived right in the middle of it. God then intervened and made the issue of the flood and the path to salvation for him. The name Methuselah has significance. It signifies that something will be sent after he dies. Of course, that something to be sent is the flood. This indicates that not only Noah had the revelation about the fate of the world. Enoch, his great-grandfather, also did. Enoch started to walk with God as soon as he realized this understanding. He must have reached a turning point in his life at that time. The revelation must have had a stunning effect on him. He witnessed the world underwater. How could he continue to live the same way he had been living? He was characterized by that situation in a way. The before and after situations of the flood had the potential to wreck his life, and profound inner realization about everything will result from this epiphany. Now, imagine yourself strolling through the town like Enoch later in the day and predicting that everything will be submerged. There was the only one thing Noah could do, to construct the ark. He was also pressed for time. Methuselah, his grandfather, was not guaranteed a long life. In actuality, unheard of brutality was the hallmark of that time that they lived in. According to the apocryphal book of Enoch, Enoch recorded his revelations and gave his son Methuselah the responsibility of preserving them for future generations. Enoch tells Methuselah about two visions he experienced in his book. The Genesis flood account is covered in the first, and the history of the world from Adam to the Last Judgment is covered in the second. The righteous are seen as white cattle and sheep in the latter vision, whereas the sinners and enemies of Israel are represented as black cattle and wild beasts. In the book of Enoch, Methuselah is appointed by God as a priest when his father dies, and Methuselah's grandson, Noah's brother Ner, is appointed by God as his successor. Methuselah requests his father's blessing and receives guidance on how to live a moral life in Slavonic Book of Enoch. Methuselah and his brothers construct an altar and hold a grand party, thanking God who had given such a sign through the use of Enoch, who had found favor with him, when their father ascends into heaven. The Book of Jubilees, which claims to be a revelation from God to Moses, given through the angel of the presence, in addition to the written law received by Moses on Mount Sinai. However, while the written law was to be imparted to all, this was to be a secret tradition entrusted only to the saints of each generation, to Enoch, Methuselah, and the others. According to the rabbinic literature, Noah and Methuselah were the only two living righteous men left when he was 480 years old. They both proclaimed that men would have 120 years to turn from their sinful ways. If they did not do so during that time, God would destroy the earth. This was done at God's instruction. The wicked, who were of enormous stature because they sprung from God's sons, the fallen angels poked fun of Noah and his work even as he was working on the ark, saying, "If the flood should come, it could not damage us. We are too tall, and on top of that, we could shut off the springs below with our enormous feet." They used these strategies, but God heated the water, scorching their feet and other body parts flesh as a result. Methuselah and his grandson Noah are shown in the Midrashic work Sefer HaYashar, Book of Jasher from the 17th century, pleading with the inhabitants of the earth to return to holiness. Methuselah was the only survivor of this class. Everyone else had passed away. After all the men who walked in the ways of the Lord had passed away, God intended to unleash the deluge besides Noah and his family. Methuselah survived until the ark was constructed but passed away prior to the deluge because God had promised he would not perish along with the wicked. Methuselah's age at death, according to the Sefer HaYashar, was 960. Islam also makes reference to Methuselah, Arabic, Matchalak, who is described as Noah's ancestor in the numerous collections of stories from the pre-Islamic prophets. Furthermore, His name was consistently included in the genealogy of Muhammad by early Islamic writers like Ibn Ishaq and Ibn Hisham. In order to ensure that God's promises to Enoch, that he would always have descendants on earth and that he would be an ancestor of Noah, would be honored, the Book of Moses, a Mormon document, claims that Methuselah remained behind after Enoch and the city of Zion were brought up to heaven. Methuselah was a prophet, according to supplementary teachings from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Biblical literalist interpretations consider Methuselah's 969 years to represent 969 solar years. Some literalists make an effort to provide explanations for how this would be possible, such as the fact that early people had a healthier diet, or that a water vapor cover shielded the world from radiation prior to the flood. Others provide theological explanations. God originally intended for people to have endless life, but sin was introduced into the world by Adam and Eve and spread throughout subsequent generations, shortening human life, especially after the flood. Some exegetes solve the dilemma to their own satisfaction by saying that the year meant by the sacred writer is not the equivalent of our year. According to the Catholic Encyclopedia, some claim that Methuselah's extraordinarily long lifespan was caused by a mistaken translation of months into years in antiquity, which resulted in a more plausible figure of 969 lunar months, or 7,812 years. However, if the same calculation were applied to Enoch, it would show that he bore Methuselah at the age of, according to the Masoretic text's numbers. The numerals in Genesis 5 could for convenience have all been multiples of 5 or 10, according to one theory. Ellen Bennett contended that the Genesis 5 numbers in the Septuagint are in tenths of years, which will explain how it was that they read 950 years for that of Noah instead of 95 years, and 950 years for that of Methuselah instead of 96 years, and 969 years for that of Adam instead of 93 years. Surely it is much more rational to conclude that Noah lived 50 years instead of 500 years before he took a wife and begot Shem and Ham. According to Yigal Levin, the purpose of these lengthy lifespans is to quickly move the reader from Adam to Noah. They are meant to convey the sense of a long ago, according to Claus Westermann. A persona by the name of Ubiratutu who appears to be nearly identical to Methuselah is mentioned in some translations of the Sumerian king list. He was the progeny of Enmendarena, a mythical Sumerian character frequently linked to Enoch since he died not and entered heaven. Up until a flood engulfed his kingdom, Ubiratutu reigned as king of Sumer. Methuselah and Ubiratutu were two people who perished in the Great Flood, despite their various ages. Berossus, a Babylonian author, also asserts that monarchs might live for tens of thousands of years before the events of Babylon's flood myth, which is similar to Genesis 5. According to Lucian Boya's Forever Young, A Cultural History of Longevity, the Epic of Gilgamesh, in which Gilgamesh rules Uruk for 126 years and his ancestors are said to have ruled for several hundred years each, contains traces of the Mesopotamian legends that are used in the Bible's depictions of Methuselah and other long-lived individuals. Boya further points out that both Indian and Chinese mythology have stories of rulers who lived for thousands of years, and that the Bible is somewhat restrained in its portrayal of early humanity as being able to live for hundreds, rather than thousands, of years. The lifespans of the characters in the Bible are shown to have gradually decreased after the flood. According to Boya, Noah's sons lived between 400 and 500 years, Abraham passed away at the age of 175, Moses passed away at the age of 120, and David passed away at the age of 70, which the Bible indicates was advanced for David's time. Boya contrasts early biblical individuals' long lifespans with those of the Golden Age characters in Hesiod's poem Works and Days, whose bodies never age. The eighth patriarch, Methuselah, dies in the year of the flood, ending the 10-generational line from Adam to Noah, during whose time the world is destroyed. Methuselah's father Enoch, the seventh patriarch, does not perish but is taken by God. Given that Adam would have passed away during Methuselah's lifetime and that Methuselah could have learnt about the Garden of Eden from Adam, According to Boya, Methuselah serves the symbolic purpose of connecting the creation and the flood. The monarchs of the Sumerian king lists reigned for more than 1,000 years, and Mesopotamians held that their modern kings were descended from the Sumerian king list kings and that living for more than 1,000 years made one somewhat or completely divine. According to Robert Noyes, the author of Genesis purposefully made all of its characters pass away before they reached the age of 1,000 to make a point about these Mesopotamian beliefs and any assertion that a ruler is divine. Methuselah died before he reached the age of 1,000 years, according to Noyes, to demonstrate that he was not divine. The fact is this: there is no explanation on the reason Methuselah lived longer than us all. It can only be the will of God. Thank you for your support.